I'm Axel Cushing, Editor-in-Chief at GameLuster, and this is The Score, a weekly digest of news and commentary from GameLuster and around the industry for the week ending September 9th, 2023. The Entertainment Software Association has recently made two surprising announcements regarding the future of the Electronic Entertainment Expo. The first involves the dissolution of an agreement between the ESA and events organizer ReedPop. ReedPop had a multi-year deal in place with the ESA to help put on E3 near the start of this year, but with the failure of a 2023 relaunch, a mutual decision was made to terminate the partnership. ReedPop events manager Kyle Marson-Kish stated, quote, "We have enjoyed our time working with the ESA and appreciate their commitment to the games industry as a whole. While we will not be involved with the future of E3, we look forward to seeing its evolution and where the ESA takes it." The second and more surprising announcement was that the ESA has informed the Los Angeles Convention Center that they will not be putting on a show there next year. The ESA has not formally indicated that E3 will not happen in 2024, but this particular step is surprising given the long history of E3's presence at the convention center and the surrounding events at nearby venues such as the Video Games Live concerts. It's a bold step which I think rests on a couple of unfounded assumptions. The first being that the new venue, wherever it might be, will be able to hold the expected crowds. The second being that major publishers and platform holders will be ready, able, and willing to appear at the event in the first place. Post-pandemic, publishers are of the opinion that they can put on virtual showcases of their own at a time convenient to them without ESA's organization or sanction. The ESA can't necessarily compel them to appear, but given the investment some are willing to make for other big shows like Gamescom and the Tokyo Game Show, it would seem that the ESA needs to have a frank discussion about what its members are doing for it. Developer Flying Wild Hog and publisher Jagex have announced that they are discontinuing support for their ARPG game Spacepunks, and the game will be shutting down on November 6th. The game has already been removed from the Epic Games Store, and in-game purchases have been disabled. Players who have made purchases are reportedly eligible for a refund. In an image announcement on Twitter, Flying Wild Hog and Jagex stated, quote, "This decision follows careful consideration of market conditions and our goals, and while tough, it was deemed necessary. This can only be seen as yet another corpse on top of the mountain of evidence that live service games are inherently unsustainable. That whatever short-term viability they may have, the always-on mindset is logistically infeasible for all but a few companies with ridiculous amounts of resources available to them beyond a certain point, and maybe not even then." One has to wonder how much money could have been saved simply by either releasing fan server support or re-engineering the game to be playable offline or through LAN or peer-to-peer co-op. Regardless, another game has been lost to the memory hole. In a story similar to one we covered a couple episodes back, THQ Nordic has announced their remake of the 1992 survival horror game Alone in the Dark has been pushed back to avoid competing with other titles in October. Originally slated for October 25th, the game now has a release date of January 16th, 2024. In a statement, THQ Nordic said, quote, "Our intention is to avoid competing with the wake of Alan's epic release," referencing Alan Wake 2, "and to evade the dazzling skyline of cities adorned by the graceful swings of Spider-Man." They went on to say, quote, "This extension will serve a dual purpose. Not only will it permit us to meticulously perfect the gaming experience, but it will also grant us the opportunity to fully immerse ourselves in the remarkable releases of October," which I suppose speaks well of certain members of THQ Nordic's love for games. But if they're genuinely tweaking and fine-tuning a game which has a lot of weight behind it, and are willing to risk the discontent of the fans who were hoping for a Halloween release, then it shows a great deal more respect for the game than Uwe Boll showed for the original. It may be this generation's version of Duke Nukem Forever, but Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has taken a new turn in its torturous development process. Paradox Interactive announced last weekend at PAX West that a new studio has finally been chosen to pick up the project. Developer The Chinese Room, best known for Dear Esther and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, will be taking over and, from the tone, starting more or less from scratch. Studio director Ed Daly stated, "Vampire the Masquerade holds a special place in our hearts. The story world's dark setting, filled with intricate narratives built on top of modern society, perfectly fits our studio's catalog. Bloodlines 2 is our most ambitious project to date. Fans of the franchise have been eagerly awaiting this game, and we are up to the challenge." Paradox Interactive's VP for World of Darkness, Sean Graney, also expressed confidence in the new effort. "We were immediately impressed when we saw the Chinese Room's proposal for Bloodlines 2, he said. "They have a true passion for the source material, making them ideal partners to develop a story in the Vampire the Masquerade setting that resonates with players." He later added, We are committed to making Bloodlines 2 a success. Bringing on a studio that shares our vision was critical to helping us achieve these goals. Fans of the franchise can rest assured knowing that Bloodlines 2 is in good hands, and we will have more to share with you in January. An article on PC Gamer went into more depth, indicating that while a significant amount of art and level design from the first attempt by Hardsuit Labs is being retained, the Chinese room is essentially starting over in terms of narrative design and RPG mechanics. We'll see if all this pays off, assuming Paradox and the Chinese room hit their target window of a fall 2024 release. Finally this week, a keynote address at last week's GamesIndustry.biz investment summit from former PlayStation boss Shawn Layden has raised the specter of potential disruption hazards from companies who are currently outside the current gaming space, but are potentially looking to make inroads. Layden stated, quote, "First, consolidation can be an enemy of creativity," a less than subtle reference to the rash of big purchases from companies like Microsoft and Embracer Group. Quote, "I also think rising costs in gaming are an existential threat to all of us, and the entry of non-endemics into the sector, otherwise known as the barbarians at the gate. Right now, we see all the big players going, 'Oh, gaming? It's bringing in billions of dollars a year? I want a piece of that.' And so we have Google, Netflix, Apple, and Amazon wanting to get a piece and trying to disrupt our industry." On Layden's first point, I genuinely cannot agree more. Whatever might make sense on the balance sheet, and arguably only in the short term, is utter lunacy when it comes to the development process. As to his second point, again, you'll get no argument from me there. Development costs seem to be skyrocketing despite the typical downward trend in electronics getting cheaper over time, and those costs appear to be getting passed on to the consumer all too often. It's Layden's third point where I'm more inclined to disagree. I don't disagree that Netflix and other companies are looking at gaming and thinking, "There's gold in them there hills." But if we borrow Layden's allusion to barbarians at the gates, I think we're looking more at Hannibal and the Carthaginians than we are Alaric and the Visigoths. Last year, Netflix announced that they were seriously exploring setting up their own cloud gaming service. About a month back, the company released a game controller app on the Apple Store, and shortly thereafter began a small-scale beta test in parts of Canada and the UK for Netflix games on TV, which, if Netflix's descriptions are accurate, is basically the same Game Pass / PS Now / OnLive / Gaikai / Stadia we've seen time and again. Netflix's VP of Gaming, Mike Verdu, outlined their plans as, quote, "the same way we did mobile, which is to start small, be humble, be thoughtful, and then build it out. But it is a step we think we should take to meet members where they are on the devices where they consume Netflix." I'm sure that plan sounds very soothing to Wall Street investors, but as a realistic strategy, it's likely doomed to failure. Why? The same reason that Stadia failed. The same reason that OnLive and Gaikai failed. The smoothest streaming technology in the world isn't worth a damn if you don't have any games to play through it. Without that critical element, you're just an added middleman trying to explain to consumers what it is you do. Realistically, gamers should only need, at most, 2 middlemen in their gaming experience. One is the platform interface they're using, whether that's Steam or EGS or, God help us, the Xbox app on PC, or the dashboards on Xbox and PlayStation. The other is the ISP of choice they use to get online for MMORPGs or live service games, and that shouldn't even be there for anything outside those two genres. Everything else is somebody trying to slurp up engagement metrics. It's intrusive, it's almost voyeuristic in a twisted sort of way, and it's obnoxious as hell. And yet, everybody and their dog seems to want to get in on the act. But lest you think Layden is foreseeing the doom of the games industry, there's a lot of evidence which has built up over the years that game streaming does not make for a viable standalone product. At best, it's a value-added proposition, something you have to supplement an existing content library. And that is the Achilles heel for Netflix, for Amazon, for anybody who gets this idiotic notion in their head that the games industry is ripe for disruption. Disruption only works when the status quo is not simply untenable, but is fundamentally out of sync with the current market environment. Nobody's going to be disrupting anything in the games industry for the simple fact that there's a lot of games out there right now. It could be argued that we're experiencing an overabundance of games. We're getting a glut of titles which came about at least partially during the pandemic. These have been some of the best games in years. And I can guarantee you, nobody is going to want to be fiddling around with a stupid mobile phone app to try and play them when there's plenty of better hardware out there. This is not to say that the games industry as a whole can sit on its laurels and count up their money like Scrooge McDuck. Remember those first 2 points Layden mentioned? those conditions are out there, and the existing companies in the field are going to be affected by them. We've seen with Embracer Group how reckless consolidation has led to an overall loss of value in the company, not to mention all the studios that have been shut down in the last 6 months. And even in the last week, we've seen what happens when a company decides that their game is simply too expensive to keep around and have to kill the whole thing. There could very well be radical changes in the games industry in the offing because simple logistics is going to bring them down far faster than any theoretical outside competitor who thinks they've got the magic bullet. Let's be real. Everybody believes the magic bullet is doing something people have already done, but on the internet. I do think that the industry is long overdue for a course correction. Not a disruption so much as a recognition that they've been going in the wrong direction. They've been getting by on what they think has been the best way to make money. But we're starting to see that it's not. That the technical debt major studios are running up for their flagship titles are going to reach a tipping point where the situation simply cannot be recovered. That the logistics of cloud computing and massive server farms for live services are a resource sink which demands budgets that start at eye-watering and just go up from there. They may be able to avoid it, but it's going to mean changing their business models to one which doesn't treat the customer like a thief or a data set. Meanwhile, Netflix and the other would-be contenders are going to learn that making games really is pretty hard. They're going to repeat the same mistakes Stadia made, the ones that OnLive made, possibly even some of the ones that Infinium Labs made with their Phantom console. It's going to be a bumpy ride. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe. You can find other news articles along with guides, reviews, and features on our website, GameLuster.com. The opening music for the score was written and performed by Nirav Gandhi. I'm Axel Cushing, Editor-in-Chief at GameLuster, and this has been The Score. Thank you for listening.